Greetings. Once more, we're here again, and I would like to speak a little bit about emotion. Emotion. My goodness. Did you know that how you handle your emotion has a lot to do with your belief system? Did you know that? And emotion has a mind of its own. Emotion, I have a book called "Is Stress a Catalyst?" and just looking at some excerpts in this, and emotion is a core of our being and reflect one profound aspect of the wonder of being made in the image of God. Many times we may not recognize emotion, how important emotion is, but it has a language of its own. It's usually read, emotion is read and interpreted. And many times one would look at how an individual interprets an emotion and may also misinterpret the one who interprets the emotion. Sometimes you may see someone at a broken state, and it may be interpreted as that one is weak. And that may be a misinterpretation because that individual was just expressing their emotion. And if somebody expressed their emotion, that doesn't mean they're weak. And so again, it could be based on the interpretation of that individual. Emotion is very important. And we want to look at emotion as a guidance. It serves as a guidance and can be powerful. Emotion is powerful when it's connected with truth. So again, we have to look at the belief system, because if you misinterpret what you see, it's going to mess with your emotion, because you may go away with a wrong interpretation and you spend the whole day being sad. You spend the whole day being unhappy when you really misinterpreted something. So emotion really has a key part in our lives. But one thing with emotion, if it gets pushed aside and not dealt with, it's going to pile up somewhere. That's what we really have to look at. Your emotion can get piled up somewhere where it does not need to be. You know how many people are struggling in their emotion and they are not having physical ailments because of that? Do you know how many people have pushed their emotion aside and not acknowledged it and end up thinking erroneously, thinking wrong? Some people are so fearful of feeling that they stuff their emotions somewhere. And so somehow emotion will get your attention. Which one is it? One of them, if you say to somebody, do you get angry? They say, oh no, I don't get angry. That's not true. Why do we look at anger as a taboo? Are we misinterpreting what anger really is? Are we waiting to see chairs flying, furniture broken to recognize that's anger? Anger, it first starts when something is not pleasing. But it doesn't have to get to the stage of where you break things. That is not anger. That's rage. And so let's look at that. If we can acknowledge that there's something that is disturbing us and recognize that something sent off a signal to say, I am disturbed about something, and really try to see what is this signal connected to, what is really showing up, and acknowledge what it is, instead of now that anger triggered off something else and the anger was not dealt with. So what happens? I mean, we're looking at emotion. It's innate. It's inborn. It is something that God gives us. Some people express their emotion by crying. So many of you were told when you were crying because you hurt, don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry. Now, when you say don't cry, you're hearing I should not feel the way I feel. It's not mine. It's wrong to feel. And then you become an adult and you're still struggling with that very emotion because now you are told you shouldn't feel the way you feel. You're going to feel. So again, we're looking at emotions. And I can see there is some of you just at that point. You were getting a whipping and it hurt and you were told not to cry. But you were hurting and you were told don't cry. Now, what did you hear? Don't feel the pain you're feeling even though you're getting a whipping. So we got to sort out these emotions and get to a place to where it's okay. And so what happens is that when you feel a way and you're told not to feel the way, it now sends a confusion to your system. Because now you don't know if what you feel is what you really feel. And so we want to start looking at bringing things into alignment. One may perceive a certain emotion as terrifying based on the experience. And so we're looking at many times the way we see things based on maybe our age, because something may have been terrifying to you at a very young age, and at this age it means nothing. And so you have to, so what does it mean? That what was painful then is not painful now? What is the truth? It was painful then because of your perception, but you have grown. So why is it that some are stuck in their emotion and their reaction to something may not even match their chronological age? And someone may say to you, you're acting like a child. Yes, you are. Because you're still stuck in the emotion of a child and not giving yourself the okay to now respond to it in a way that is truthful. That child emotion could have been wrapped up in fear. But you're not really fearful of this, but anything that reminds your emotion of that similar situation, if you are stuck there, you're going to react as a child. There's something called the limbic system. The limbic system actually houses your memory of an emotion. So many times, if you were wrapped with fear, that limbic system operates round about the respiratory area. And so you find that anything that triggers that memory, that fear memory, and you find that most people with fear will start having shortness of breath because it now triggers off that memory in the area of respiration. And that fear that occurred now shows up. And you find that people will have shortness of breath or anxiety because it now causes one to breathe very fast. And you know, when you breathe fast, it affects also your respiration, and then it affects what your thinking process, and then it just goes around a cycle where now you can't think straight because of fear. And so what we have to do, we have to now really visit that initial fear and speak truth into that situation, because you're no longer there. You're no longer in that situation. And so now you can now recognize that you have been healed from that fear. So what are we saying? Today, as we look at emotion, we're now looking at what comes along with that thought. That thought has a memory, and as you remember, that thought connects with that memory, it now triggers an old response. But now you can take control of that old response, and you can change that response. because you're not there in the past. You're here in the present and moving forward toward your future. And so we see, when we go to the issue of anger, anger should not be repressed. You do not repress your anger. One should be aware of anger. And anger also is another form of stress. Because when you repress it, you want to look at what is it that is not in agreement with my system that I can now take control of. And so we see that anger is a form of stress that occurs in the brain. Is why you find that some people, they may get so angry they end up with a headache, and that headache can lead to a high blood pressure. So you can see how these things, if they are repressed and not really dealt with, when I say deal with it, you're taking authority over it. You're taking control of the situation. You're taking control of what is it you're reasoning and how you see certain things and how you make a decision within yourself, and being control within yourself to not let whatever it is that you feel that you may not be able to control it, but come to terms, I may not be able to control this. But not allow it to get to a place where it affects your system. You know, this book that I had written on stress being a catalyst, it really shows up where that stress can become a catalyst. Because sometimes it takes a stressful situation to help you to make a decision. And so in that moment of time, you may make a decision to get to move or not to move. And so that stress can push you into a place where you're forced to make a decision. Because what happens within your system, it gets overwhelming and it gets overloaded. And with all that energy going on within, it puts you in a place that you do make a decision. Some may not be the right decision, but it just forces you in that position. So when expectation hit a wall, frustration, anger, hostility, and depression shows up. And so internalized anger can lead to depression. Internalized anger leads to depression, and depression, when you see depression shows up, what does it show? You're angry at yourself because you kept it all in. And so I'm just giving you some highlights today, which you can read in the book. But when what happens is that internalized anger shown up as depression is really creating a stress factor within. Emotion can be either negative or positive. So don't look at emotion as emotion always being negative. It can be negative or positive. And so sometimes you can have a happy emotion, you can have a sad emotion, but I just want you to recognize that humans constantly face choices between good and evil, honesty and dishonesty, forgiving or revenge, love or hate. If the personality foundation is not rooted in and grounded in knowing you have and can make choices, it can create a very stressful life. Life can be a bowl of cherry. Life is what you make it. So I encourage you today to make a decision about your emotion. Face it for what it is. Face it for whatever it is, or let it go. There's some things you just need to let go. It may seem it's out of your control, but the fact is you can turn it around the way you think. Take control of your emotion and not allow your emotion to rule you. Acknowledge your emotion, but take control of it. Be happy. Be happy. That's a choice. The choice is that your emotion belongs to you, not somebody else. So be encouraged today. You're not out of control. You're in control. So be in control of your emotion. Shalom.